Hyrox isn't just about endurance, it's also about strength. And you might have been asking yourself, how strong do you need to be? The answer is simple, strong enough. Now, what does that actually mean? We need a prerequisite level of strength to move through the stations without being stopped by them and being able to do so in an efficient manner. And sometimes the metrics we use to assess strength, like the exercises where we would actually measure, don't necessarily line up with the requirement of the actual race. Now let's put some clearer numbers and expectations onto this. We need to take some considerations first, because Hyrox isn't just Hyrox. Here we have the open division and we have the pro division. In the open division, you have to push a sled of approximately 150 for the guys and 100 kilos for the girls. And in the pro division, you have considerably more weight. That means 200 kilos for the guys and 150 kilos for the girls. And then again, the sled pull as well varies in loading from the open to the pro division. But the sleds are the most significant difference. You will also have some difference on the farmer's carry and on the wall balls as well as the lunges. The rest of the race stays the same. Another thing to consider when measuring strength is the difference between relative strength and absolute strength. When recommendations on how strong you need to be for Hyrox are given, you will often find recommendations such as your deadlift needs to be 1.5 times as much as your body weight, or maybe even the same for the squat. But this is a relative measure based on your body weight. And the lighter athlete might struggle a lot more with pushing the sled than a heavier athlete. Absolute strength for Hyrox matters a lot more, especially when it comes to the sled push. And something else we don't know and can only assume is how much the strength in the squat and deadlift actually correlate with our ability to push the sled or pull the sled. And the simple reason for this is, even though the deadlift and the squat are rather trivial exercises, there's some technique to them, as well as helpful body segment ratios or anthropometrics. Someone could just be built for squatting because they have very good squatting mechanics, but they might really struggle with pushing the sled because their strength they can display in the squat doesn't necessarily carry over to the sled push. Now, another thing to consider is your actual background. If you come from an endurance sport and all the things you have been doing revolve around running, biking, or cyclical, low intensity, long distance sports, you might not have spent much time throughout your life developing your musculature to produce a lot of force. If you, on the other hand, come from a strength training or CrossFit background, you're very familiar with the strength movements or exercises, especially the power lifts or even the weightlifting movements, so your body is already capable about producing a lot of power and a lot of force in a very short amount of time. And that's the capabilities we need to do well in Hyrox. Let's take your background into consideration. You're a strength athlete and you already have the requirements to produce a lot of force and you're very powerful. In that case, we would recommend that the only strength training revolving around Hyrox is using the actual stations. You're probably strong enough to do the wall ball, you're strong enough to do the lunge, and you're also strong enough to move the sled. To get better at these now, the only things you should be doing are as specific towards the Hyrox race as possible. That means you should be doing plenty of wall balls, plenty of lunges, and most of your strength work specific for the Hyrox should be sled pushes, and sled pulls. When you come from an endurance background, it is not as simple as that, because then we really need to start building your strength up so you are able to get strong enough to do the wall balls, to do the lunges, and then especially build enough strength to move the heavy sleds for the race. And now, how do we actually do this? Even though I said earlier that the deadlift and the squat might not be good metrics to test, they are great ways to build your strength, especially in the lower body. But let's consider other exercises as well, and not just think in these clear patterns of which exercise might be the best. Let's think a bit broader and consider which movement or style of movement is the best for you. The main idea, especially when we want to get stronger, is to use multi-joint exercises. And here we want to have 4 categories that we focus on. The first one is hinging, then we have squatting and lunging, then we have upper body pulling and upper body pressing. The upper body pressing strength requirements for Hyrox are rather low, but we always want to include some of it to keep our training balanced and keep our bodies healthy. Now let's start with the squatting and lunging. Here, the exercise choices are rather simple. We have back squats, we have front squats, and even a leg press you might find in a Globo gym is a great way to develop more leg strength for the squatting type pattern. I said lunges and split squats are also in this category, and these are rather important to keep our body balanced. That means we train unilaterally, so we train one side and then the other. That's a good way of working on imbalances or asymmetries. And it also allows you to build a specific strength for the lunging that we need for the Hyrox race. The next category to consider is the hinging. And here we would have all the classic lifts as well. We have deadlifts, we have glute bridges, Romanian deadlifts, good morning, everything that revolves around the posterior chain and bending at the hips. If you struggle with mobility, which might become an issue especially for the conventional deadlift, then you might consider doing something like a trap bar deadlift, where you are able to get into a more advantageous position. And then you should take the same considerations as for the squatting. Here, find exercises you're comfortable with that allow you to use a large load in safe positions without getting you into compromised positions. Now let's move to the upper body next. Here, as we said, we have the divide between upper body pulling and pressing movements. For the pulling, you can use the regular sled, but just as a lighter weight, and just do an arm over arm sled pull to develop the specifics of the grip strength and also the upper body pulling musculature you would need to move the sled throughout the race. But we could also do simple exercises like the strict pull-up or the ring row to get more assistance work in and build the muscles we would also use during the sled pull. Then, as I said earlier, with the pressing musculature, it's not as relevant for Hyrox, but we still want to include some to stay healthy and keep our training balanced. Here we would recommend exercises where we move over a large range of motion, like the dumbbell bench press or a deficit push-up. The horizontal style of the pressing will help you with your burpee and might allow you to pop off the floor when you do the burpee broad jumps a bit quicker. To develop strength, there is no need to max out any of the lifts. That means you don't need to do any 1-rep maxes. We would recommend training in a rep range of 3 to 6 repetitions and do 3 to 5 sets of each exercise. To build your strength plan, we would recommend that you take one exercise of each category, do them for the prescribed reps and sets that I just told you, and then do them twice a week for your perfect strength program for strength development specific for Hyrox. Keep in mind that strength training needs to be progressive. That means each week you should increase the load slightly and you want to have some variation with your exercises as well. That means if you do back squats on Monday, you might want to do front squats on Thursday for some variation. If you're interested now in how we would program strength exercises into a Hyrox program that also has the specific needs for the other aspects of Hyrox, you will find it in the description down below. Now, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.